So we're here with David, and I just wanted to ask, first of all, if you ever had, when you played a sports, I think if I'm correct, you played wrestling in high school.
I was a wrestler, yeah.
Did that give you a sense of, when you moved into the sports communication world, that you wanted to only cover that sport, or?
Well, no, not really, because wrestling, we don't do much wrestling coverage, but growing up, you're showing me this picture of all the great Boston athletes. I was just crazy about sports, and I watched sports all the time. My mom says I learned how to read. When I picked up the newspaper, I wanted to figure out who did what in the box scores for baseball. So I just loved sports, and for my whole life, I followed it. And when I talk to kids trying to get into the business, I say the best way to learn it is to love it and immerse yourself in it. And that's what I did, not knowing I was going to have a career in sports television, just because I loved it so much. It sounds like you do as well. So wrestling was a great way to have a competitive outlet, and I liked it a lot. It was a tough sport. It taught me a lot of things. But we don't do a lot of wrestling coverage on ESPN, so it's not something that really made me think, okay, I want to be in sports or not. But it had other benefits for my life, that's for sure.
And would you say it's beneficial to be able to cover more sports than just being specialized in one?
You can take it one of two ways. We have analysts that just focus on one sport. We have a basketball analyst and a hockey analyst and a football analyst. My position, I have to know something about all sports. I'm kind of a dilettante where I have to be conversant in hockey, which is not my favorite sport, but I have to know enough about it to be able to pull off a highlight or to have an interview with a hockey player. But whatever is happening that day, if you have a big tennis tournament going on, you need to know about tennis.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot more about soccer because that's been a push of ESPN. We know how globally popular it is. So, over the last 10 years, we've done a lot more soccer coverage. Now, we were buying some soccer league rights, so we're getting more and more into it. So, yes, you have to have in my position, you have to have a broad knowledge of all sports.
And as an anchor, you don't have to have fully experienced, because you see, I see a lot of analysts who are ex-professionals.
Yes.
As an anchor, is it more just you study the sport, not fully immersed in it, but somewhat so you can make conversation, like you said, in it?
Yes, and I compare it to cramming for a test every day that you go to work, because whether I know a lot of sports history or not, it's not going to be that helpful unless I know what happened last night. So the shift that I work on at ESPN, I have to get there at 3:30 in the morning. Okay. And there's no way I can stay up and watch the games the night before because I got to get some sleep. So I get to work, and you dive into, I spend a lot of time at ESPN.com. I'm watching, with my left eye, I'm watching SportsCenter from the night before. I'm at my computer, I'm digging around for research and information, and you're basically getting completely caught up on everything that happened the night before as fast as possible, and then writing it all down.
Oh, I know somewhat on that for tests, at least.
Yeah, it's like taking a test every day.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to learn all the stuff, and then you have to put it down.
And then apply it, yeah.
Exactly.
And I've seen a lot of, researching, I've seen a lot of sport anchors or analysts as well. They didn't study at least sports communications. And I know you studied international relations from Colgate.
Yes.
Do you need to focus on sports communications, or can you study something else and then maybe still apply for?
I think it would help to study sports communications. Now, I did it a different way, and it worked for me way back when. I think these days it's a little bit more competitive, Bernie, as far as kids your age are starting to figure, hey, I want to get into this. And then in college, they're going to TV or radio stations on campus, and they're working, and they're getting reels made, which is basically tapes showing what you can do. So I think it's a huge plus to study communications, because you're going to be going up against people who are, the competition is there, and there's a lot of people that want to do what you want to do. Now, it's not impossible to do it the way I did it, but it's sort of unorthodox, and it's tougher, I think.
And with an internship, usually that can put you on the right path.
Yes, absolutely. I was telling you, my son Dugan is 20, and he just yesterday started working for Little League.
Okay.
And it's his first like line on a resume that's has something to do with the career that he wants to get into. So an internship, yeah, that's like the first stepping stone. Well, taking part in a TV radio station at school, doing work, you can do it. If any of these schools that you're thinking about would have that kind of resource, and then they also will help you getting internships at whether it's a TV station or a network or a newspaper or whatever it might be.
And well, you took some internships. I think you started in Georgia. Was it specialized in sports, or was it something else, and then you moved into the sports side?
No, it was a local TV station, a small station in Macon, Georgia, and I worked as an intern for the sports department.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about anything. I went down there. They taught me how to use a camera to shoot video of games and do interviews. They taught me how to edit video. They taught me how to do on-air stuff, look at the camera, address the camera, read the teleprompter. It was basically learning on the fly.
Okay.
And to me, that's the best way to learn. And so I did that for 11 months, which is an incredibly long internship, but it wound up, I was able to make a tape and drive it around the Southeast, and I was able to get a job out of it.
And with all the accessibility you get with the internet these days, taking initiative like this interview, or just creating, while you're maybe in an internship as well, you can create your own YouTube channels and start your own semi-network. Does that also help when applying for jobs and putting in your resume that you have some experience in that field as well?
Absolutely. There's so many different avenues nowadays for guys your age to break into the sports business. And as you said, the word initiative, that's what it's about. It's like you just create something out of, you can do that by yourself almost. You don't need a whole TV station or network around you. You can do all of that kind of work with a phone or a computer or whatever it might be, as long as you have the drive to do that. So yeah, that's a great way to bust in.
And like kids like me, at least I see when I see sports analysts, and all I see them is them enjoying the sport, and just instead of me seeing them in the job, I see them as just having fun, because they're covering their meetings, the stars are meeting, they're traveling to Europe. Is it always like that, or is it sometimes like between that?
Is it always enjoyable? Is that what you're asking?
Enjoyable, yeah.
No, there is some stress and strain to, I think, any job, but certainly I can attest to the one that I have. Hopefully, when you're on the air, you're having some fun, because that's sort of like the payoff at the end of the day. You do all the work ahead of time to get to that hour or 2 hours or 3 hours on air, and in part, some of it's a little acting. So you're not always doing back handsprings and it's all sunshine and rainbows and lollipops. There's some tough parts to it, and it can be a grind at times, but hopefully it's enjoyable, because hopefully you enjoy your job. I do, and so hopefully that comes through on the air.
And it's been what, like 25 years, I think, in ESPN?
Yeah, coming up on 24 years. Yep.
And in those 25 years, was there ever doubt that you would be able to, or say like any doubt that this was the wrong job for you, or was it always sports is my thing, I want to stay with it?
Never a doubt that being in TV sports was not where I wanted to be. Early in my career, you're always striving for what's the next thing, and where am I going here, and where am I going there. And then when I got to ESPN, I felt like, okay, I'm good to be here for the rest of my career. So I've always been 100% committed to the job that I have.
And you have to stay, there's always competition coming in, right? So you have to stay like at the top of your game all the time.
Yeah.
So my dad, like, he always tells me it's not easy to reach the top, but once you reach that top, the hardest thing is to maintain yourself and not get like comfort and be, oh, I'm here now, I can take it easy. Because then, like anything in the world, someone else can just come right in and take it.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't like rest on your laurels and just sit back. And I don't know what it is about myself, but when I get to work, I kind of I start to churn and really start to, bust the gut to do the best thing I can. And I'm a pretty laid back guy normally, but when I get to work, I don't know, the competitive juices get going. And yeah, you'll watch people that they've hired. You'll say, "Wow, that guy's pretty good. I need to be good too." You always have that sense that there's competition even inside. People that are friendly and your colleagues and everything, but there's only so many shows to do, and we're all kind of in competition with each other.
So like any sport, I guess there's competition between itself to be better.
Yes.
Because that's always that makes you be better for yourself, and then that also
absolutely
that makes the whole, I guess, let's say ESPN be better because everyone's just pushing themselves to be better.
Exactly, and you have a bunch of driven individuals at ESPN. It's not it's a place. I don't know if it's the pinnacle, but it's a pretty high rung on the ladder of TV sports, and so a lot of people work really hard to get there. So you feel like you're with a group of pretty competent, able-bodied people. Is that kind of feel? Yeah,
and having met all this people, interviewing people. Before that, were you ever not nervous, but I know I need to get some of my shyness away from interviewing. Were you ever like that, or was it just like comfortable interviewing with different people?
There are times when I remember talking to the NBA commissioner David Stern, and I was slightly intimidated because he was so intelligent, and he had a very kind of a sharp way about him. Sort of a sharp-tongued. If you make a mistake or missay something, he would let you know. So those kind of interviews would sometimes be daunting. I find the best way to be comfortable with an interview subject is to know so much about it or about the person that it takes away any of the uncertainty of doing the interview. You never know how an interview is going to go. I mean, the guy may be all sorts of fun and play along with you, and he may be standoffish and not talk to you. And so it's a real interviews are interesting. We had a guy at ESPN named John Sawatsky, we called him the interview guru. He devoted his life to breaking down a good interview versus a bad interview and the right kind of questions to ask, and it was just like a fascinating thing. So all of us at ESPN, the reporters, the anchors, the analysts, we all had to go through this seminar to learn how to do interviews, and it was unbelievably helpful.
And is there a let's say like a pecking order of where you start off? So do you have to be an anchor from right away, or do you start out like as a not low, but like as a low reporter and have to make your way up to an anchor?
That's interesting. A lot of people, if you're a reporter, you're a reporter forever. And if you're an anchor forever. There have been people that have crossed over that maybe started out as a reporter and became an anchor, maybe less so started as an anchor and became a reporter. For the most part, there are two channels that you can go to, and I think most times the anchors remain anchors and the reporters remain reporters, but there is crossover.
So you can I've seen that as well, some crossovers.
I mean, when you work at a local TV station, you're doing both. You're a reporter, like what I was doing. I was the quote-unquote weekend sports anchor, which meant I would anchor on the weekends, and then 3 days a week I would be the sports reporter. So you have to do both sides of it.
And like anything, like we go back, it's good to be versatile with, just in case you need it as a let's say anchor, or sometimes you need it as a analyst or something else.
Well, I wouldn't be an analyst, but might be a reporter.
A reporter,
Definitely. That you're working different muscles. As a reporter, you're doing a lot of interviews. You're putting together what we call packages or stories, which is just sort of a contained piece with your voiced over and all that. Versus an anchor, you're sitting at a desk, you're doing highlights, you're doing a whole bunch of different things.
And as an anchor, do you ever commentate on sports games, like an NBA game?
You mean like do play-by-play?
Or play-by-play, yeah.
There are. I never have personally, but there are some anchors who have dabbled in play-by-play, like Steve Levy, who is now the play-by-play guy for Monday Night Football at ESPN. He also is an anchor. But he's a really good play-by-play guy too. So he's able to do both. He wears both hats. So you'll see some anchors, studio anchors, doing play-by-play as well.
And those play-by-play, since they're traveling to the stadiums and arenas in different countries, is it good for them to be able to know more than one language, more, let's say, than English?
Oh yeah,
Having that versatility with, like, let's say, Spanish or French or whatever they're being sent to?
absolutely. I mean, if you know two languages, you're twice as valuable as someone who knows one. Like our reporter in Tokyo, Fernando Palomo, who lives in Canton. I don't know if have you met him?
Yeah. I think we're having an interview with him.
Oh, good.
Soon, yeah.
Yeah. So he's predominantly he speaks Spanish, but we did a live shot with him the other day, and he did it in English. So he can. So he's good for Deportes. He's good for ESPN. You know, so that's just a bonus.
And with English and Spanish being two of the most spoken languages, especially English being, you can communicate basically with almost everyone. And is there a difference between, like you said right now, Deportes and ESPN? It's just under just ESPN but different branches?
Yes. So like different station is an old-fashioned term, but different place on the dial, and they do predominantly Spanish-speaking sports. So they're basically doing what we're doing, but just in a different language to a different audience. Yeah.
Okay. And going back to the sports and seeing soccer being like rising up here, especially in the U.S., is it just covering here in the U.S., like especially in the English side, or are you guys branching? Or I know you guys cover a lot of sports, but how do the TV rights?
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think ESPN just got the rights to La Liga.
Yeah.
So that's a big feather in our cap, and just I'd say over the last decade, it seems like U.S. Broadcast partners are starting to figure out soccer is huge, and it's huge in this country, and it's huge across the planet.
Yeah.
So we need to capitalize on this. We need to get in on this. And it took a while. Sometimes the thinking here in the United States is, baseball, basketball, football, a little hockey, we'll be all set. Nowadays they're starting to figure out, no. I mean, we got to get soccer. So that's a huge part to any sports platform, right?
Yeah, because with all the other broadcasting companies who start getting soccer as well, you could get left behind.
Yeah, and then we've seen there's more competition to get the rights.
And do you notice? I was talking with Taton that we were saying, like, do you notice a lot of people who work at ESPN or anywhere else, and now that like we were talking about the accessibility with internet, leaving their jobs to start, let's say, like a YouTube channel or their own sporting network, since it's easier? Is that happening a lot now because of the
I think you'll
internet?
see well, I think it's more so with like podcasts and things.
Or podcasts, yeah.
It seems like everyone has a podcast these days, and it's pretty easy to get it up and running. I don't know so much about YouTube channels. Usually when you're established at ESPN, I'm trying to think of I don't think it very often happens that you're going and doing a YouTube channel or whatever. It might be a TikTok or whatever. But I know that a lot of guys that work at ESPN can have a podcast on the side. That's a very popular thing to do.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, David.
My goodness, you can really interview. I mean, that just came off seriously. Like.
Palomo, ESPN commentator since the year 2000, if I'm correct. He's covered many areas of mostly soccer, from the Spanish League, Champions League, all the way to, I heard, the World Cup, the 2010 World Cup back in South Africa. Thank you very much for joining us, Fernando.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Bernie. It's a pleasure.
Now, I wanted to start off because as a college student, or as a almost college student that's looking to go into the sports communication business, I was wondering, I noticed that when you graduated from A&M, your master's was on agricultural economics and science. How did that impact your decision to later become a sports analyst, since they're not
related at all.
Yeah.
The only relation to it is that by studying agricultural economics, I knew what the process of growing coffee was. Therefore, I know how to grow the thing that I mostly live by, which is drinking cups of coffee every day. Um, I decided to go into the field of agricultural economics because of my family's background. I'm from El Salvador, and we have a coffee plantation in El Salvador, and therefore my idea was to go back to my home country and help the family grow the business, right? But in the process of, I guess, experiencing things, I was put forth the opportunity to know the how broadcasting, how sports broadcasting works. By being, I was a young aspiring athlete, and I was passionate about sports and about the Olympic Games at the time in 1988, and then I went and offered my help to the local sports station in El Salvador to see if they needed anybody to help them during the Olympics coverage. And I ended up finding out that sports television was a fascinating world, but I always thought about it as something I could do as a hobby whenever I came back. So I still developed that hobby. So I did it. I was able to do it well enough. So they gave me the opportunity to call games and do stuff like Olympic Games, for example, in 1992 in El Salvador, and work as a television commentator. But always thinking that would only be my hobby. But I wanted to do it so well so that I would enjoy it while doing it. It was like playing a little game, a role game. You know, it was like, okay, let me play this role of television commentator and have fun with it. But I never knew that was going to be my living in the end. But I was passionate about it, and at one point I just thought to myself, if I want to really fulfill my life's ambitions, is why not try getting an opportunity to become a sports announcer? So I ended up sending resumes all over the place, and ESPN answered back, and here I am.
And talking about that sports, I would say it's a very successful as an athlete. Hearing that you still hold the javelin record for track and field down in Salvador, that was something I found very interesting. Now, knowing it was what, in like 1996, I think it was
1998. I went to school.
Yeah.
So I aspiring athlete again. I went into school, and then I knocked on the door of the track team, and they decided to take me on as a walk-on, and they opened the door to a world that I would always be grateful to, because it taught me how to prepare myself for and program myself to achieve goals. And my first goal as a freshman was just to make the team. So I redshirted my freshman year. So my first competitive year, my goal was to make the travel team. My sophomore year, my goal was to make the traveling squad that actually went outside of Texas. And then at the end of my collegiate career, I ended up getting a scholarship because I was good enough to be on the team that went on to the national championships and competed at the national championship. So it was a great ride, and that taught me how to challenge myself to achieve goals that I might have thought even at the beginning of the year were unachievable, unattainable.
And something that I've been trying to get out of the way of confusion, because a lot of people tell me when you go to college and you're a student athlete, it's very, very difficult to balance out being an athlete, high-end athlete with the school, and also working for your major or focusing on your career. How do you find a balance between both school and sport at the same time?
At a very early age, I was put forth a great phrase that taught me, even when I was in high school, taught me a lot about what we as human beings are offered every day. Mm-hmm. We're offered 24 hours every day. Mm-hmm. No human being was ever offered more hours in a day than we are. So all the successful human beings in history had 24 hours to work with. why should I be any different and do less with those 24 hours? So my idea at the very beginning was to try to take as much advantage of every single minute of every single hour of every single day. So it's time management. Once you're a student athlete, of course, time is restricted or time is limited because of what you do on as an athlete, right? Schools give you the benefit of being able to register early for classes. Therefore, you can take the classes that you need to take at a schedule that will allow you to always have time to practice, of course. And then because you have very little time to study, you after practice you go back and hit the books as soon as you're done with practice. And of course, there's semesters that are going to be harder than others, and the workload, it's going to be tough on some, but it never put anybody down. There's been amazing athletic careers with great academic careers to go parallel, and they're both done by the same person. So again, if you're able to just understand that Albert Einstein, Mother Teresa, all the great human beings in history have had 24 hours. How come they did so much with those 24 hours? Why can't you do more with 24 hours, right?
And with coming in from El Salvador to the U.S., it's of course not an easy switch, especially the language, the culture. Does that add an extra element as well into the whole switch?
Of course, yeah. The first couple of semesters where I had like a blessing in disguise, I guess. I was hurt my freshman year because I had a shoulder injury my first couple of weeks of practice. Therefore, my practice load was lessened by the fact that I was hurt and that I needed the rehab in order to get back or to get into the team and start practicing normally with the team. So therefore, I had the time to hit the books hard in my first couple of months or my first 2 semesters, and therefore get my feet wet to know and understand what going to school in the U.S. or under the U.S. system meant, and in a different language, of course. By the time I was able to join, practice regularly on my sophomore year in college, but my freshman year as an athlete, I knew what it took to go to school, right? So it was easier to build in the athletic workload, I guess, within the academic workload. Again, there's some semesters that are easier than others, but I guess if you just focus on taking advantage again of the opportunities and resources that the schools provide you, then I'm not saying it's made easier, but certainly you have the resources and tools to go and do your job.
And your career has been a lot of switches from, like you said, you started in like a channel, sports channel down in Salvador in 1999, and then in 2000 you moved to ESPN, who right now is one of the biggest sports broadcasting networks in the world. How was that switch? Was that a very positive switch for you at the time, or stressful?
Oh, it was great. I mean, once you get the opportunity to work at the place that you actually dreamed of working at, to me and to this day, I take it as a daily challenge to prove ESPN right, because they made the right choice. So it's still, to me, that's my philosophy. I have to call a game tomorrow, and I take it as if it's a final test. It's a competition, that I'm put on the line to prove myself, but not to prove myself to me. It's to prove ESPN right, that they did the right choice, or they made the right choice in choosing me.
And they must have, because you've been there for a while, doing everything right, especially being the first ESPN, at least on the Hispanic side in the U.S. to transmit in ESPN Sports Center. I think you were the first one to be there as well. So you've been evolved around and around everything in ESPN for a while now.
I started hosting the Sports Center in Spanish for Latin America. I was on the first show the first ever, Sports Center outside of the U.S. I was there as well on the first ever Spanish language sports center in the US when we did that in 2004. And then I transitioned over to call soccer back in 2006, and that's what I've been doing since then. I've been given a lot of opportunities. I have, I don't know if it's a good trait or one thing that I need to fix, but I've done good so far. I guess with having that close to me is the fact that I always say yes when it comes to opportunities. You know, if somebody hands me an opportunity to do something different, I say yes to it and prepare myself to meet the challenge. And so I was given the chance to become a soccer announcer. I said yes to that opportunity, and then they gave me the opportunity to call soccer games in English, not being my native language. I said yes to that. I prepared myself to go do it and confront the challenge. And to this day, I'm still given those opportunities. So the game I'm preparing myself for tomorrow, it's a game in English. I'm calling it a game in English. So therefore, I must be doing something right? If they still giving me the opportunity.
Well, yeah, most definitely. And would you say that versatility in English and Spanish, is that something you are very proud of helping you in the job, where that could be, you could be in a English game or then as a commentating a Spanish game? Does that versatility help you with the Spanish and the English?
More so than knowing the languages, I guess, is understanding the cultures.
Okay.
I guess that is a great trait to have. Understanding the cultures that you work in and that you're going to communicate to. Of course, that you need to know the language in order to be understood, right? And for that communication process to actually work. But I'm more proud of at least I can say that I'm proud of understanding the US culture and the Hispanic culture in the US as well, and the place that we as Hispanics have within the culture of the United States. And that's something I'm really proud of. I'm saying that I would actually say I'm more proud of that than knowing just knowing two languages, which I think is very little. You know, there's when you meet people that know, you know, various languages and can communicate with ease in various languages, that's a great trait to have as well.
And I would like to say, the first time I heard you was on the FIFA 13 Xbox game on Spanish with Mario Kempes. And that was one of the first times I realized about the career of a sports commentator, how you can make a career out of something you love. It doesn't even have to be soccer, it could be any sport. And I think that was the moment later on, moving on, every time I played the game, every time I heard a game, that I kept going to that moment. And me and my dad have and my sister have a line that we love when you say, it's when Busquets has the ball in the FIFA game, and you say, "Con la pelota, Sergio Busquets." We're always messing around with that line. It's one of our favorites. But was it a dream when you made a video game like FIFA?
Well, I played the game. I played EA Sports video games for a long time, you know, and I guess I can say that I understand the impact that being the voice of one of those games can have on kids and young adults, you know, all over the world. So when they asked me to do it, I understood. I thought I understood what it meant, but I run into cases just like what you're telling me right now. Many kids that have grown up and have told me, you know, I grew up listening to your voice, and I'm thinking, but I'm not that old. How could you be saying to me that you've grown up, you know, listening to my voice? I feel like I just started yesterday. So for people to tell me that, it not only kind of impacts in a big way or makes me realize what in a big way what length of a career I've had, you know, not know how good it is, but just how long it's been. But I do realize the amount of people that are reached by the game. And when that is when I ended up realizing that, I can also understand how many intricate messages you can actually give to youngsters that are playing the game. You know, when there's certain plays that call for you know, and a player protesting to the referee, you know, it's a great opportunity to tell the kids and those playing the game that you don't go up to the referee by insulting them. You have to respect the authority, right? And that it's always good to be competitive, but within the lines and boundaries of respect to the opponent and the competition. So those little things, I know that you know, in the long run, make a difference in the ways kids now, when they grow up, see the game.
And was that something you ever thought it was going to happen when you first joined ESPN, that you'd be making a lot of impact through just commentating the game and then being on the video game, one of the big games?
No, I did not have being on a video game as one of my career objectives. Definitely, I know it was something big, and I knew that if it came, it would be the dream that it ended up being. But I never thought in my wildest dreams that it could actually become reality. You know, it was something that in the back of my mind, I would think, you know, that'd be great to be on that video game, but I never thought it was going to be possible, and it ended up being possible. It still is, you know, to this day.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, no, I know the new games are always coming out with the same one, and we keep hearing it. It's something that is just unbelievable. From FIFA 13 all the way here, you're still
Is
there.
the Busquets line still there?
Yeah, the Busquets line is still there.
I'll change it.
It's the best line. Believe me, my sister and my dad and we have a beautiful joke about with the Busquets line. And I wanted to ask about the sports communications job as itself. When you're commentating, I wouldn't say before COVID, would you travel to the stadiums you would commentate, or would you do it behind like a green screen room? Or
Oh, I would go to a lot of games, but not all of them. It would be impossible to keep a life balance by living in the US and traveling mostly to Europe to call the games, the most important games you would travel to. And then there was a period of time when I was covering the Mexican national team that I would go every time that Mexico played. I would go to wherever Mexico played. You know, went from the World Cup to the Netherlands to New Zealand to many places calling the Mexican national team, but not all the time. I would say that maybe 7 out of 10 games I would do them in a booth at the headquarters in Connecticut, watching the game off of a television screen, watching the same pictures that everybody would be watching at the same time at their house. And over time, by doing that, you kind of get a sense as well, and especially by being in the same stadiums that you're calling the games from, you understand how the stadium acts and how the stadium interacts with the game, that it makes you actually feel like you're there, you know.
Ahora sí, si nos podemos cambiar al español, quería preguntar, con ESPN hay tantas deportes, tanto nivel de fútbol que se cubre de Alemania, España. ¿Tú tienes selección de qué partidos quieres comentar, o a ti te dicen juega el Barcelona Real Madrid, tienes que hacer fuerzas?
Bueno, sí,
Bueno,
me dicen
claro,
que tengo que hacer Barcelona Real Madrid a fuerzas.
Clásico, eso sí es más
Eso
cómodo.
es lo más fácil, ¿no? No tengo elección sobre qué partidos hago. Hay un departamento que se encarga de la distribución de las asignaciones y hago el partido que me toca hacer, ¿no? Muchas veces yo creo que con el tiempo vas aprendiendo también que para hacer Barcelona Real Madrid tenés que hacer otro montón de partidos que no son necesariamente los de mayor audiencia, pero hay otra realidad y hay muy poca gente me la cree, la verdad, y es que a mí no me importa quién me está viendo. A la hora de hacer un partido, me encanta el fútbol porque me gusta el deporte, y sé que hay muchas veces que he hecho partidos para muy pocas personas en la audiencia, pero igual lo disfruto. O sea, me gusta muchísimo, por ejemplo, hacer partidos de no solamente equipos que no conozco porque me invita a conocerlos, sino selecciones de países en los que nunca he estado, porque es como hacer un viaje virtual para conocer esos países al mismo tiempo que vas conociendo el fútbol, a través de su selección, vas conociendo un poco de su país y un poco de su cultura también.
Y tú lo dirías que, como dijiste, cada vez que conoces, te toca un nuevo equipo que nunca conoces o todavía vas a visitar un nuevo equipo, pero como cada año cambian, ¿crees que antes de cada partido es como un examen? El partido es como el examen y esos días antes del partido es como estudiar para el examen, ver.
Sí,
Así es como lo ven.
así lo veo yo, al menos. Hay veces tengo más tiempo para preparar algunos partidos que otros, pero por lo mismo también cuando tengo el tiempo libre o algún tiempo disponible en mis manos, trato de tener todo lo necesario listo para los partidos que se vienen, ¿no? Yo ahora, por ejemplo, miro el calendario y tengo, bueno, mañana tengo Atlético de Madrid, Atlético Club de Bilbao, que ya los hice a los dos equipos. El domingo tengo Valencia, Real Madrid. Al Valencia no lo he hecho en esta temporada, entonces mañana en algún momento voy a prestarle más atención al Valencia que a otras cosas, ¿no? Ya tengo todo preparado, digamos, pero ahora voy a los detalles y luego al Granada ya lo he visto, pero no lo he relatado y juegan contra el Barça el lunes. Y así vas tratando de encontrarte, bueno, una vez ya los hiciste a todos, es cuando empezás ya a sumergirte en detalles que verdaderamente marcan la diferencia, en tratar de encontrar cosas sobre los personajes más importantes de esos equipos que decoran las transmisiones, ¿no? El Athletic Club tiene una banda de rock entre sus jugadores, por ejemplo.
Sí, teniendo en cuenta que hay muchos comentaristas que tienen o salen que no tienen equipo favorito, no sé si tú tengas un equipo favorito, no. Si tendrías uno, ¿cómo lo harías para quitarte eso de ser un poco más, irte de ese lado del equipo cuando lo estás relatando, lo estás analizando en la tele? ¿Hay problemas así a veces o...?
Se te va, la verdad que se te va un poco el fanatismo. Ya me ha tocado relatar partidos de la selección del Salvador, que es el equipo por el que más pierdo el sueño, el club por el que más sufro es por la Alianza, que es también del Salvador, y me ha tocado también en partidos de Conca Champions relatar partidos de Alianza. Te emocionás, obviamente, porque llega un momento donde sos hincha del equipo, ¿no? Bueno, siempre sos hincha del equipo, pero llega un momento donde el hincha y el relator terminan siendo lo mismo. Pero regularmente, durante los trámites de los partidos, y si te tocase hacer ese equipo regularmente, perdés la afición pasional por ese equipo y la convertís en una afición racional, ¿no? Que al final es tu trabajo decir, contar la historia de lo que estás viendo y tratar de ser lo más transparente y honesto posible con tus opiniones.
Sí, porque al final estás relatando para las dos aficiones,
Exacto.
no nada más.
Mucha gente, igual no dejas a nadie nunca contento, ¿no? Porque
Exactamente.
muchas veces, sobre todo cuando el Barcelona de Guardiola, por ejemplo, me tocaba relatarlo mucho, decir, ¿por qué no hablan del otro equipo? Porque el otro equipo nunca tiene la pelota.
Sí.
Entonces es muy difícil hablar, no solamente hablar de lo que trata el otro equipo de hacer para evitar que Barcelona tenga el balón, pero si ninguno de sus jugadores la toca, ¿cómo vas a hablar del otro equipo?
Es como un balance, yo siempre lo he pensado a veces porque siempre que tenemos, no el Barcelona de ahorita, pero muchos de los equipos grandes de ahorita cuando juegan contra los equipos más bajos, siempre hay diferencia de posesión, 70-30%. Y yo a veces tengo muchos amigos de los equipos bajos que me dicen, oye, pero los comentaristas a veces son muy injustos porque nada más alaban a los Messis, a los Ronaldos, a los buenos, y mete un golazo mi equipo y mira, o sea, es muy difícil balancear cuando también el otro equipo no está en mucha acción en el partido.
Es complejo, porque, insisto, nunca poder llegar a complacer a todos. Hay veces mucha gente cree que tenés una afición puntual por los equipos más tradicionales, si se quiere, pero yo la verdad que soy muchísimo más fan de las historias que puedo contar yo durante los partidos que de los equipos en sí. O sea, es como que hay veces querés que se dé una historia para que la transmisión se pueda lucir con tu relato de esa historia, ¿no? Entonces sí, me genera muchísima más emoción la historia que los equipos.
Y la emoción de la historia, tú comentando ya en partidos súper importantes como final de Champions, Mundial, todo eso, cuando el partido tiene esa sensación que va a ser un partidazo, ¿también la sientes cuando lo estás relatando con la afición y todo eso?
Es muchísimo más fácil porque es cuando menos trabajo tenés que hacer en realidad. El trabajo hay que hacerlo cuando tenés que mantener la atención o sí, evitar que la gente se te vaya a ver otras cosas, pues, de tantas ofertas que hay para poder ver en distintos canales, pues evidentemente tu gran trabajo es mantener la atención de la gente puesta en el trabajo que estás realizando en ese momento, en el partido que estás relatando en ese momento. Esos son los partidos trabajosos, pero los demás, aquellos donde sabes que por ya designación o por la relevancia de la competencia en la que se juega, el partido va a tener toda la atención, pues esos son los más fáciles, ¿no? Porque ahí solo tratar de no arruinarlo simplemente.
Sí, tú al final del día también no lo ves como narrador, sino como aficionado también del deporte en general.
Estás, sí, claro, te envuelve la emoción de los eventos. Por eso es mucho más fácil relatarlos en cancha, porque
Ah,
es
sí.
mucho más fácil transmitir algo que tenés viendo, que tenés ahí cerca y de lo cual te impregnás o te podés contagiar. Cuando no estás en la cancha, el trabajo es más complejo porque ahí tenés que transmitir sensaciones a kilómetros de distancia, ¿no? ¿Qué puede estar sintiendo una afición o la relevancia de un partido para cierto grupo de aficionados comparado con la relevancia del mismo partido para el otro grupo de aficionados y no los ves, no los palpás, no los percibís, no has estado en las cafeterías o restaurantes escuchando conversaciones o no vas en un taxi escuchando a los taxistas o los programas de radio que escuchan. Entonces ahí es donde te tenés que meter a la distancia, a escuchar programas de radio, a leer periódicos, a meterte en páginas de internet, a ver lo que dicen las páginas oficiales de los equipos, en fin, es más trabajoso el conseguir suficientes herramientas para poder transmitir la emoción a la gente.
Y con tu carrera tan exitosa, con todos estos eventos que has cubierto, te quería preguntar, ¿cuál ha sido tu evento favorito que has cubierto como narrador?
Uf,
De los tantos, sí, es una, pero debe de haber uno, ¿no? O unos.
no, no, sabes que a mí me emociona mucho pensar en el siguiente.
No siento.
Me cuesta mucho guardarlo, le guardo mucho cariño a todos, o sea, a los que he cubierto le guardo un cariño especial. Cada partido, cada final que he hecho, cada mundial que he cubierto, digo, pude haber hecho mejor esto o aquello, entonces estoy esperando el siguiente para tratar de mejorarlo y que ese evento puntual sea mejor que los anteriores, ¿no?
Y también con los Juegos Olímpicos que cubriste aquí en Tokio y los que has cubierto antes, ¿has visto una diferencia en nivel profesional entre los dos, o sea, en los tiempos diferentes? O sea, ¿crees que avanza o cambia el nivel por los años o no?
Sí, no, el ser humano si algo no conoce es de límites y lo supera en algunos deportes o eventos, lo hace más rápido que en otros, eh, pero siempre encuentra maneras de superarse. Y la realidad es que estos últimos Juegos Olímpicos, por ejemplo, aún y ante las condiciones eh, extrañas en las que se tuvieron que preparar todos los atletas para llegar ahí, la particularidad que cada uno tuvo que vivir para poder clasificar y luego viajar, luego convivir con las restricciones permanentes de movimiento, movilidad por los protocolos existentes y la ausencia de público en las tribunas, aún así te das cuenta que nada puede contra el deseo de un atleta de alcanzar la gloria. Y se vieron actuaciones formidables que a mí me dejaron boquiabierto, o sea, el récord mundial de 400 metros vallas, por ejemplo, de Caster Warholm, yo lo vi ahí nomás a 4 filas de la línea de meta y me dejó bobo por la calidad de tiempo, marca que había realizado y no había público en la grada, ¿no?
Y le ponen mucho esfuerzo a algo que también se puede cancelar en cualquier momento con con la pandemia. Si sube algo, pasa, en cualquier momento los podrían haber cancelado. Y todo el esfuerzo que le ponen se enseña al
Por
final.
eso mismo, cuando muchos hablaban de que los Juegos Olímpicos se tenían que cancelar y que no podían llevarse a cabo en las condiciones en las que se llevaban a cabo, yo me ponía a pensar, esto nunca, los que lo dicen jamás fueron atletas o jamás se esforzaron por ir a buscar un sueño de la manera en la que lo están tratando de conseguir estos 11.000 atletas, ¿no?
Sí, pues o sea, como el mundial del fútbol, representas no nada más a ti mismo, pero a tu nación, a tu país, en los juegos más viejos de la historia.
Sí, y la realidad es que fueron especiales, o sea, fueron una colección de momentos. Yo no tenía ninguna expectativa, la verdad también iba un poco condicionado a lo complicado que iba a ser el trabajo por las restricciones, de nuevo por los protocolos, y sin embargo, entendiendo que eso era lo que teníamos que hacer para convivir en semejante escenario y que cuidarnos a nosotros mismos significaba también cuidar a los deportistas y evitar que ellos viesen truncado su sueño. Una vez asimilas todo eso, te das cuenta que lo que estaba viviendo era un evento para la humanidad en sí singular.
Y para terminar, quería saber, cuando cubres los Juegos Olímpicos, ¿cubres nada más el deporte que conoces, el fútbol, o te vas también al javelin como le hiciste, cambias de deportes o nada más es el fútbol?
Bueno, todo depende de qué te asignan, ¿no? Y todo depende también de qué tipo de derechos son con los que cuentas para realizar tu cobertura. Los primeros Juegos Olímpicos que cubrí lo hice primero haciendo distintos deportes colectivos, fútbol, hockey, básquet incluso, y luego ya me dediqué al atletismo la última semana. En Río arranqué relatando a la selección de México en los distintos estadios y luego me dediqué al atletismo la segunda semana. Y en estos juegos, como no teníamos derechos de transmisión, llegué en la cobertura de todos los eventos posibles, o sea, para tratar de darle seguimiento a los deportistas más importantes de la región y de aquellos países que son más relevantes también para nuestra cobertura. Entonces, así arranqué viendo a México contra Francia el primer partido, después una competencia de tiro con arco, después te vas a natación, a clavados, en fin, vas de un lado al otro, ¿no?
Es es un evento mundial y es algo que como cualquiera cuando lo descubrimos es como para prepararte para un examen y al final del día lo has hecho muy bien.
Exacto.
Y pues te quería agradecer muchísimas gracias por aceptarme y dejar entrevistarte, Fernando.
A ustedes, de verdad que, bueno, Bernie, a vos lo digo.
Aquí. So we are here with two-time Super Bowl champion Raul Allegre with the New York Giants, and we're here to ask him some questions. So Raul, thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
So I want to start off. I learned that you started off with soccer before American football, let's say, became your profession. How was that change from one sport to another? Was it a big change or was it?
It was a pretty drastic change, but it was a smooth change. What happened is that growing up in Mexico, in Torreon, I never watched football, not even on TV or even by accident. So I came to the United States as an exchange student, and I wanted to practice sports because that's the best way to meet friends. As I'm sure you know, in high school I had lots of friends. and I realized that soccer was not popular in the United States in 1977. So I looked at my options, and as you know, in the United States, sports are seasonal. And at the time, during the fall, it was either football or cross-country running, which didn't really appeal to me very much. And so I went to a football practice and realized that I didn't have the body to be a lineman, a running back, or a linebacker, perhaps a receiver, a defensive back, but I could tell that those guys knew what they were doing, and I would have to have a very steep learning curve. But I saw a lineman kicking field goals. I'm talking, like a 6'4", 230-pound lineman who could barely made it from the extra point line, which is the 10-yard line. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that. So I went to the coach. I asked him if I could have a tryout to kick for the team. And he said, yeah, come back tomorrow and we'll see what you can do. So I came back the next day. I wore some cleats from my foster, I used to be, as an exchange student, you have a foster family. So one of my brothers in the United States loaned me some cleats, which, would fit a little bit big, but they were better than playing with sneakers or kicking with sneakers. So I tried them on, I kicked, and we started, they put me with the backup quarterback, and we started at extra point. He would just hold it. We didn't have a snapper, so he would just hold it, put it on the tee. Back in high school, we still use a tee. And so we started at extra point, and that was the first time that I was ever kicking a football through a goalpost with my wife. And so I thought I was pretty easy, and we kept moving back every 5 yards, and then we started going from one pass to the other, from side to side. And I kept going, and I was able to get to the 35-yard line, which is a 45-yard field goal. And the entire team stopped what they were doing. They were having individual sessions with their position coaches, and they came over to watch me kick. And I made the field goals from 45 yards out rather easily. So we moved back to 50, and I made those two, and then the guy that was holding, his name is Jim, he said, do you want to try one from 55? I said, sure, why not? And I made it without any difficulty. So the coach said, yeah, we definitely want you on the team, and that's how my football career started. So it was a change from not ever watching a football game to having the natural ability to kick. I mean, I didn't know the rules. I didn't know you had to kick off after an extra point, so I made an extra point in one game, and I went and sat on the bench, and everybody was waiting for me to kick off, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I said, just go ahead and kick off. After we scored extra point and field goal, then you have to kick off. So that's how I got started.
Yeah, it's something I've seen a lot, especially when I entered high school. Was a lot of my soccer teammates playing as well for the football team in the different seasons, since football comes first in the fall. I have many friends who also did the same thing, kicked, since soccer is basically kicking. They all were assigned for kicking, and they kicked from the 40, 45 without any problem scoring. And then usually, since, like you said, football is more of a big here in America, you can get a bigger chance of getting a scholarship from football than soccer.
Yes, because soccer is not all the schools have soccer programs. You have to have the same amount of scholarship for men and for women. So soccer is one of the sports that is not offered in all the universities. I think the ACC and some the Big Ten, they do have soccer programs, and some of the Division II and Division III universities have soccer programs. But what they call the Power Five, I believe, only those two offer scholarship for men. For women, pretty much every major university has a soccer program. So you're right. It's easier to get a scholarship playing football, kicking, than it is to. The only downside is that there's only one position for a kicker.
Yeah.
So you have to be good. You have to be really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you get that scholarship for soccer, it's not going to be the same. Some of them are not. You cannot compare them to the ones you can get from football, because some of them can be full, and then some soccer ones.
Soccer scholarships tend to be partial. Like they will divide the scholarship between 2 or 3 players. One will get tuition, the other one will throw the ball, the other one would get books, or
Yeah.
a combination of those. But that's how it was.
And focusing on college, what was your approach after knowing that you were going to stick with football for college? What was your approach to keeping a balance for what you were studying, which I think was civil engineering, and soccer, which is a lot of students always struggle with all the workload you have with practices, games, and then all the workload you have for like studying, tests. How did you find a balance between the two?
Well, it was hard. I mean, first I didn't get a scholarship right away. I went back to Mexico, and my high school coach made a video of me kicking in the spring. You know, I think it was May, right around that time. And at the time, I was able to kick 65-yard field goals. So he distributed the video amongst college coaches that would recruit his high school. And the University of Montana was interested. They didn't have a school of engineering, so I went there the first 3 years. And as you will soon find out when you go to college, most majors have the same classes the first 3 years with a little changes, but for the most part they are the same classes, the same requirements. So I was, Joanne, my foster mother, may she rest in peace, told me you can go to Montana for 3 years and then transfer to a school that has civil engineering program, and that's what I did. I went to Montana for 3 years, then I transferred to Texas. Most of my courses, not all of them, transferred, so I had to take some, even though I had taken English, government, and history, I had to take them over here because Texas wouldn't accept those from a different university. So I ended up, I knew that I wasn't on scholarship right away. I was a walk-on, so the first year in 1980, the fall of 1980, I couldn't play because I was a transfer student and I had the redshirt. So I got a scholarship in the spring of '81. So I knew that I would have the spring of '81, the fall, '81 and '82. So I only had 4 semesters to try to finish. 5 semesters. So I loaded up my schedule and tried to finish. I didn't quite finish. I was 3 courses short, but by then I had already played 1 year in the NFL, so I could afford to pay my own tuition after it. So I ended up playing '81. I was taking 15 semester hours plus 2 labs, 2 3-hour labs. So I had a load of 21 hours of engineering classes, which were not easy, plus playing for a team that was favored to win the national championship. We ended up number 2 in the nation that year, so it was quite a load, and it took a toll on me, but somehow I made it through, and in 1982 it was the same thing, and but then I got the opportunity to go try out in the NFL. So.
And you did make it through being drafted by the Cowboys at the beginning from the NFL drafts as a free agent. Not knowing that you were going to later play on for the Giants, one of the biggest rivals, was that a big achievement for you, reaching the NFL?
Well, I wasn't really sure that I was going to. I don't know how I got 2 free agent offers, because the USFL, which was a spring league that was like a minor league in 1983, they had the first year and they didn't draft me. They had a draft in January. So I thought for sure the NFL would not draft me, and that's what happened. But they offered me contracts as a free agent, one by the Cowboys, one by the Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons. So I decided to go with Dallas because they were America's team and they had been to the NFC Championship 3 years in a row. Tom Landry was the coach. They were the team that everybody watched. So I figured, if I'm gonna, and also they offered me $5,000 to sign. So
That is all.
Atlanta didn't offer me a sign bonus. I thought that was all the money I was going to make from the NFL, and so I signed with Dallas, which was a great experience because I got to meet Coach Landry and many of the players that were legendary, and many of which are in the Hall of Fame. And I had to compete with Rafael Setien, who was also from Mexico, who was considered the best skipper in the NFL. And I compared favorably to him at the end of training camp. I had a chance to play in one preseason game, and we alternated kicks. He made a 51-yard field goal, I made a 52. He made his extra point, I made mine. That was the only game that I played, but that showed all the teams that I could kick. So they kept sending scouts to watch me during practice. I ended up having a tryout after the last preseason game. I did real well, and the Baltimore Colts, now they're the Indianapolis Colts, the Baltimore Colts made a trade with Dallas, and I ended up in Baltimore, and I made some all-pro teams, and was part of the team that won 7 games. It was, distribution was a huge walk, but nowadays distribution is the easiest part.
It's just putting yourself or taking action that sets a lot of people from success and not having that success. And with this, with all your success, did you have someone supporting you along the way, a parent, a mentor, someone who always told you can do this, someone who gave you support?
You mean during football or after football?
Football, like
well, my parents were very supportive. My brother and my sisters were very supportive. My parents didn't tell me no. When I went back to Mexico and I took the entrance exam for Monterrey Tech to go to civil engineering, I passed it and I had been admitted. And I had the opportunity to go to Montana, who didn't have a school of engineering. They didn't say no, even though it was a very difficult economic time in Mexico. We're talking 1978, and we weren't a very rich family. We had enough to go to good schools and live a very comfortable life, but we didn't have an overflow of money. My parents never said no. They trusted in me and they supported me, and I knew that I went to Montana on scholarship for 2 years. When I went to Texas, I wasn't on scholarship, so I had to pay my tuition, room and board and everything, and it was quite a financial burden. And this is 1980. By then, things had gotten economically complicated in Mexico, and the exchange rate with the peso, the dollar started to fall. And but fortunately, that's when I got a scholarship to continue my education. But my parents were always supportive. After I finished and I started working in broadcast, I've never had anybody that was a mentor, anybody that I could follow. I just basically went and did it on my own. I mean, I wish I had a mentor or somebody that told me what to do or what not to do, but I did not. Even now, I don't have anybody that is, other than my wife. My wife is supportive because she knows that this is a venture, and that if it doesn't work, we might lose this house. But she's supportive, and she's very supportive, and I'm going to give it 2 years to see if this channel that has never been done becomes a business opportunity. Then it'll be great. If not, we do whatever we need to do.
And with this channel, is it just you, or are you contributing with other?
I was able to. I talked to 10 other people that used to work with me at ESPN.
Okay.
And they're not with ESPN anymore. And I told them what my vision was. I said, we're going to create a digital channel that doesn't exist, that nobody else is doing. And it's not going to be profitable for many months. If you're willing to provide content, and we're doing shows, we're doing videos, we're doing blogs, we're doing chats with fans. As I said, in 2 years, and if the company becomes viable, I'll share the company. So that's what we're hoping to do. I mean, but right now it's 11 of us, including myself. And they're all very recognized names. If I could, the names that are working on this project are the top of the top in the respective sports fields.
So it's slowly coming along, and
Yeah, it's. I mean, we started in April,
Okay.
so it's
and with a pandemic. And
with the pandemic in April, and so yeah, it's but it's taking shape. It's coming together. It's very slowly, but it's coming together.
And is it something you see as just focused on one single sport, or will you once it starts growing, do you think
No,
you could
right
have
now
variety?
we're doing several sports. We're doing football, of course, which is my sport. We're doing baseball. We have one of the top analysts in baseball. We're doing soccer. I mean, we have 4 soccer commentators that amongst them, they cover 27 Champions League finals, 8 World Cups. I mean, we have some
So very experienced.
very experienced people. For soccer, we have basketball, NBA. The top analyst with ESPN for many years, Carlos Morales, is part of the project. We have the top announcer for Formula One. We have the top announcer for Major League Soccer, who also was a broadcaster for NFL at ESPN. We have the top analyst for cycling. We have a former Wimbledon champion that does tennis. But we have a pretty very complete group, and I'm looking to add more sports and more contributors in the future. But right now, we just want to consolidate what we have.
That's it's hopefully it's something we might see very big in the future.
Well, let's hope. It is boomer boss.
And was this a dream for you to start this?
It really wasn't. It was a result of the pandemic. I mean, when the pandemic hit, ESPN told me that I couldn't renew my contract anymore.
Okay.
I don't know if that was an excuse or if it was so. I needed to know what to do. And I started doing interview after interview after interview. I mean, I literally did at least 100. And somewhere from organized media outlets, like the top networks or top newspapers, but many were from fans that had their podcasts from the basement. And some of them were very good, some were not very good. I mean, you could tell who prepared and who didn't. And I thought that there was a market. Then, of course, everybody was doing Zoom, and we've incorporated Zoom in our channel. And that's when I realized that the future is not going to be TV. TV is going to basically phase out. It's just like you probably don't remember who Kodak was. I mean, I'm sure your father knows. Or Blockbuster Video, or I mean, and if you could, keep thinking of the way everything is. I mean, when Amazon started, nobody ever bought merchandise over the internet. Now, most people buy things, so it is a change. I think sports TV as we know it is going to disappear. I think everything is going to be online, and right now, I have the only channel on. So is it going to work? I don't know. But we're trying.
Yeah, with the way things are going, I think you might be on something there.
It actually looks really good. I mean, the quality. We do very good content.
That's the important thing in the end. It's what people need is that the good quality so they can buy what you're trying to.
Well, that's the plan.
Yeah.
That's the plan. But you have to break the inertia. You know, people get everything for free on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about doing YouTube. The problem with YouTube is that you don't own it. Google owns it.
Yeah.
So everybody says my YouTube channel. No, it's not
Yeah, it's
yours.
Google's.
It's your channel that happens to run on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not your channel.
You're not your own boss.
I mean, YouTube can shut you off any moment they want.
Yeah.
And you can never sell your channel. I mean, you can sell advertising, but it's never going to belong to you. So I decided I want something that belongs to me and eventually will belong to others, and that can grow and that we can manage.
Yeah, and in the end, it's you who control it. You can put whatever you want. You can hire, do whatever you want in the end. So as you said, YouTube, they make you sign all agreements and.
Well, if you want to make money, I mean, you get $18 for every thousand views, you get $18. And every advertisement that they sell, they get 45%.
So it's all.
And they own everything. So I figured that's why I wanted to do my own. So.
Y ahora sí podemos hacer el cambio
En español.
a
Sí.
español.
Sí, y tengo una junta a las 5. Nada más ahorita,
sí, ya estamos.
Sí, con mi grupo de
ver.
derecho. Pero,
Aquí mismo.
no, por Zoom.
Ah, bueno, pero
Sí, sí,
aquí
sí,
en tu casa tú.
Aquí en mi casa.
Ah, bueno,
sí,
entonces
sí.
vamos a...
Sí,
¿Nos
tengo,
quedan?
sí.
Sí.
Sí, unas 2 o 3 me quedan.
Adelante, sí.
Ahora un poquito de recordatorios de tus 9 años que tuviste en toda la NFL. ¿Cuál dirías que fue tu mejor momento? Teniendo los Super Bowls en cuenta, ¿fue tu primer Super Bowl o tienes otra memoria ahí que...?
Pues hay varios recuerdos. El primero fue mi primer partido, porque estaba jugando con el equipo de Baltimore, que no ganó un solo juego en la temporada 1982, y terminaron 0-8-1, porque ese año también hubo huelga. Y nos tocó jugar contra Nueva Inglaterra en el antiguo Estadio Sullivan, y me tocó empatar el partido y mandarlo a tiempo extra. Tuve 3 goles de campo, ganamos al recuperar un balón suelto, regresado para touchdown. Pero fue mi primer partido en la NFL con 3 goles de campo, incluyendo uno de 52 yardas. Ese año tuve varios juegos, tuve un buen año, yo metí 30 goles de campo en 35 intentos, pero en cuestión de satisfacción no hay nada que se compare a ganar el Super Bowl. O sea, el Super Bowl es primero que nada, yo siempre tenía la esperanza de que iba a jugar en el Super Bowl, pero estaba en un equipo que era malísimo, no malo, malísimo. Y el equipo malísimo me dio de baja, me despidió, que quieras o no te hiere el amor propio. Pero al final de cuentas, como te digo, yo soy de los que creen que Dios tiene un plan para cada persona, y me sacó de ahí, me sacó del peor equipo y me puso con el mejor equipo, y terminamos ganando el Super Bowl. Entonces ese año que empezó de una manera muy triste, porque pues que te hablen y que te digan que ya no te quieren y te despidan de pretemporada antes del primer partido de temporada regular, pero culminó con un campeonato del Super Bowl. Entonces te das cuenta que pues siempre hay que mantener la fe, siempre hay que seguir trabajando a pesar de que las cosas parezcan que no están saliendo, porque durante 3 semanas yo no tenía trabajo, tenía que ir a practicar y buscar la manera de mantenerme motivado, pero al final la recompensa fue haber ganado un Super Bowl en el cual estuvieron presentes mis papás, que ambos murieron, mis hermanos, tíos, primos, y que fue un logro que yo no había, que siempre había soñado pero que no había anticipado. Entonces nada se compara con eso. Logros individuales tuve muchos. O sea, durante esa temporada, partidos en los cuales yo fui el jugador más importante del equipo. O sea, que recibí la mayor cantidad de puntos, un gol de campo al final para decidir el juego. Me tocó abrir la temporada 1989 de una manera dramática con un gol de campo de 52 yardas en la última jugada del partido, partido el lunes por la noche en Washington, que era nuestro rival principal. Y otra vez, o sea, ya al final de mi carrera, cuando los Gigantes también me despidieron, me contrataron los Jets y había un juego en el que el ganador iba a avanzar a playoff y el perdedor iba a quedar eliminado. Me tocó empatar el partido al final, mandarlo a tiempo extra y ganarlo en tiempo extra. Entonces, sí hubo satisfacciones, son individuales, pero nada se compara con ganar el Super Bowl. Y aún el Super Bowl 25, en el cual no tuve la oportunidad de jugar, pero que era parte del equipo y que puse mi granito de arena. Al principio de la temporada tuve 3 juegos muy buenos que terminaron siendo la diferencia y que ganáramos la división. Sin esos juegos no hubiéramos ganado la división. Y mi aportación durante las prácticas y siendo la cuña Matt Barr para que Matt Barr se mantuviera en forma. Matt Barr terminó metiendo 5 goles de campo incluidos de la victoria en el campeonato de conferencia y ambos celebramos. Entonces fue una experiencia diferente, pero también muy, muy satisfactoria.
Y para terminar, hay no muchas dudas, yo siempre he tenido unas. ¿Cuál es la diferencia entre un analista como tú cuando estás y un comentarista? ¿Es el mismo trabajo o uno nada más?
No, te complementas. El relator, si quieres describirlo de esa manera, te está describiendo la acción. Y tú como analista, o como le dice el analista que le da color, tú estás, él te dice qué pasa y tú explicas por qué pasa. O tú tratas de ayudarle a la gente a que disfrute mejor el juego. O sea, en qué factores se tienen que ir fijando a lo largo del juego, qué cambios se están dando a lo largo del partido. Explicar las jugadas. Mira, el 90% de los analistas, sobre todo en español, pues son muy competentes, que te explican por qué pasó la jugada. Pero ellos no se percatan de todos los cambios sutiles que van ocurriendo a lo largo del partido. Que estás viendo cómo va cambiando la estrategia, cómo están cambiando jugadores, cómo están cambiando sistemas. Y eso, si se lo presentas al aficionado de una manera accesible, el aficionado va a disfrutar más el partido.
Porque tiene que estar pasando.
Porque entiende exactamente, y puedes tú en muchas ocasiones anticipar lo que viene de esa manera.
Sí, y he notado mucho, los analistas, muchos son siempre como exjugadores que conocen el juego mejor que cualquiera, porque lo jugaron por mucho tiempo.
En inglés, sí.
Y hay mucha diferencia entre un analista que conozca más el juego que uno que lo haya estudiado pero no haya jugado el deporte.
Mira, en las cadenas de televisión todos los analistas son exjugadores o excoaches, prácticamente. Yo no sé de ninguno que no haya estado en algún momento relacionado con el equipo. En español hay muchos que jugaron en la prepa o en la universidad. No, en el profesional en realidad son pocos los que llegaron a jugar en la NFL. O sea, hay varios que jugaron en las ligas principales de México que fueron muy buenos jugadores y que entienden bien el juego. Pero hay otros que son buenos periodistas y que te dan otro tipo de análisis diferente, que es muy bueno, pero es diferente. Y tú lo puedes lograr a través de estudio de preparación y de dedicación. Por ejemplo, hay un muchacho español que fue jugador de básquetbol profesional, que se enamoró del fútbol americano y que es uno de los mejores analistas que yo conozco en cuestión de analizar qué pasa. La cuestión de tendencias sobre el partido, eso se requiere otro tipo de experiencia personal.
Perfecto, muchas gracias.
¿No? ¿De qué?
Gracias por aceptarnos hoy.
Sí, no, claro que sí.